LSU Country Sports Illustrated Zack Nagy is in the building. Good evening, good sir. How are we tonight?
Doing good. Coming off a bye week, feeling good now. Getting back into a groove. It's Bama time, so time to go.
What did you do during the bye week? What does Zach do on his time off during the bye week?
I still worked. I still got some stuff done. Women's basketball is about to kick into gear. Men's basketball, so I kept myself busy. But look, recruiting's booming. Everything else is going on, so I stayed busy. Just a little less team coverage for LSU football.
Oh, you mentioned recruiting. How about that? A 5-star flipped.
There it is. I mean, look,
Weston Davis. How about that? What did you think about that?
I love Weston Davis. I love him from a long-term potential perspective. He's a super talented guy. There was some buzz about him flipping. Did not think he was going to do it that night, but here we are. So, look, you got that 5-star that you wanted, and who knows, maybe some more will be on the way.
That would be interesting. It would be good, and especially if you were able to go into Tuscaloosa this weekend, Zach, and get a win and flip some of these kids. You start feeling really good about yourself going into this. So let's start here. We talked about it this week, but now that we have both of our biggest concerns that we mentioned last week, I think number one, we said, look, we came out of last week, you and I, and saying that this seems like, I don't want to say season ending. We didn't say that, but this seems really bad for Mekhi Wingo. It seems like he's out at least for 6 weeks. You'd need a lot of chaos to see him to come back. Your thoughts on Mekhi Wingo out and Jordan Jefferson and company having to step in?
First of all, I guess I'll hit on the Mekhi Wingo situation. That was kind of I don't know, I wouldn't say a bombshell just because obviously he's been out, but to lose him for 6 weeks and likely the rest of the season is a tremendous blow for this program. I mean, that's a guy who grades out well. He's fantastic. And he stepped into the mix when Mason Smith went down last season and played extremely well. So to lose somebody like him is heartbreaking, to say the least. Obviously, he's your number 18. He's a fantastic player, and he's a leader. So to lose him is tough. But you enter somebody in the mix like Jordan Jefferson, who grades out as your best defensive lineman on the team. Obviously, it's not the same sample size as your other guys, but he's a fantastic player, and your defensive line is deep. You have players there, but to lose somebody of Mekhi Wingo's caliber is obviously a tough blow.
I honestly thought Mason Smith would look more like Jordan Jefferson.
Well said.
That's what I want to see more from Mason Smith. You need Mason Smith to have some Jordan Jefferson type plays, like penetration into the backfield this week. And look, they're not doubling him every play. That's BS. I don't call out Brian Kelly. He's way smarter than I ever would. But I know what I'm watching, and I know he's not getting doubled on every play. He's got to make some plays. Something, Zach, that I mentioned earlier, there were two things that I think, one that benefits LSU, one that does not. This red zone defense is the absolute dead last team in the country, last in the SEC. They're going to have to find a way to get a turnover there because Bama's going to be, in the red zone. You got to hold them to at worst 3. If you're going to give up points anyway, find a way not to give up 7. They're dead last.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. You have to you have to win the little battles in order to win the war is how I look at it. And if you're looking at something like the red zone defense in that perspective, little wins in that area will add up. Little wins like that will give you.
Yeah, it's called Arkansas.
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that because that's what I'm saying too. If you can just get over the hump and win the little ones, you'll ultimately win the big one in the end. So to what you're saying, I completely agree.
Braden Swinson is a guy that I circled. Here's why. Because, look, I am not throwing Ovie Oghoufo out there. Like, I am telling Braden Swinson, listen, Proctor does – and here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to say if Ovie Oghoufo, Zach, like if he plays like it's a bad thing, but I will question this defensive staff if Ovie Oghoufo does not play at minimum 65% of the snaps. Proctor has an issue with speed, and Swinson has speed. I think that is a matchup nobody is talking about, that at the end of it, you come and be like, hey, man, Braden Swinson was going off on Saturday. They got to let him loose. Your thoughts?
Completely agreed. Solely because you and I, it might not have even been last week. In the past, basically, we've talked about, Proctor and his struggles, and he's not adjusting as quickly as some might have hoped he would. Again, a true freshman in the SEC, it's always a struggle. Players don't just come in and ball out off the rip. Like, it just doesn't happen. So Braden Swinson's a veteran. He's a savvy veteran. He's talented. He's twitchy. He can get to the quarterback. So to what you're saying, essentially, yes, Braden Swinson has the ability to eat this weekend. You have to give him more reps. Ovie Oghoufe's a talented player, but if you can throw somebody in there like Braden Swinson, who's fast and can beat Proctor off the line of scrimmage in the blink of an eye, do it. Let him do what he can do best, and that's get into the backfield and get to the quarterback.
Thoughts on the DB room and or lack thereof, I should say.
Look, dude, it's going to be it's brutal. It's brutal. All 4 of your transfer cornerbacks are out. J.K. Johnson, obviously, Zai, Deuce, Denver. This is not new news to anybody listening. Everybody knows the story. Everybody knows what this team's battling against. You're going to be putting freshmen in there, whether it's Jeremiah Hughes, Ashton Stamps, Javian Toviano, a sophomore in LaTerrence Welch, alongside Sage Ryan. It's going to be.
He ain't even mentioning Welch.
It's going to be tough. Exactly. It's going to be tough. It's going to be brutal. And look, Jermaine Burton isn't necessarily this all-American wide receiver per se, but if you allow him to do what he can do, he's going to cook. So, you know, sure, Milroe isn't the best quarterback in the world when it comes to intermediate balls, but goddamn, he can beat you deep. He's got a cannon. He can sling that ball if he really wants to. So it's going to be a challenge. So my overall thoughts on the cornerback room is it's going to be a tough task in Tuscaloosa this weekend. It's nice to have a bye week to prepare. You give 2 weeks. You get first-team reps for 2 weeks leading up to this game. And here we go. I mean, it's showtime. You have a couple more days to prepare, and then, you know, you're in Bryant-Denny Stadium rocking.
Who do you think they start?
It's a really tough question. It's a really tough question. I want to say Ashton Stamps alongside Sage Ryan. That's what I would like to say. That's what I'd like to believe. Who knows what happens with LaTerrence Welch? Could you see LaTerrence Welch line up next to Sage Ryan? Maybe. But I'd like to probably lean towards maybe Ashton Stamps, hoping that, you know, minor injury that he's been dealing with is kind of in the rearview mirror now. And look, get some reps underneath you in a major SEC West showdown.
Did you think it was interesting? Now, I know that Ashton Stamps didn't play, against Army. Did you think it was interesting that they ran out Jeremiah Hughes as the next guy?
I don't think so, solely because a lot of people inside of the program think really highly of Jeremiah Hughes. He's still a guy who's developing to the position. A lot of people don't know that he played wide receiver for a long time in high school and transitioned to corner.
And he's long, dude. Pause, but he's long. He's a longer corner.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the more he gets in this system, the better he's going to be. Obviously, it's a player development scheme, and I think he has the chance to get to that next level, and it's going to start with, you know, getting major reps in SEC ball. And
hey, I think he's gonna play.
Do you think he's gonna start though?
I don't know.
You asked me, so now I gotta ask you.
So I don't want to. I don't know. Like I really don't. Like I don't. I have no. What do they say on Tiger droppings? What everybody goes to sauces. I don't. You know. I have no clue. But I do think it's interesting. You know, like I kind of had to take Zach this week that whoever practiced the last 2 weeks the best is going to start. You know, like, and I don't think Brian Kelly's going to give you anything. Now, let me transition because I do think that this is interesting. You were at the press conference on Monday, correct?
Correct.
Brian Kelly was aggravated when asked, like, hey, guys, I can only say what I'm going to say. Zy Alexander's out for the year. But, you know, Rabelais asked him something like, well, people are freaking out on Twitter. And Brian Kelly said, okay. And like, so what is your overall just real thoughts on Denver Harris and Deuce Chestnut?
My overall thoughts would be that it's a tough situation. First of all, the casual take. It's a tough situation. You have to lean towards it's a disciplinary issue. Deuce has been, you know, out of tune since before the Ole Miss game. Denver Harris is a week-by-week situation. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Deuce doesn't suit up for the rest of the season, but you just don't know, mainly because we don't know the whole story. Right. And you could say the same thing with Denver Harris. It's a week-by-week basis. You're just unsure what's going to happen. There's no clarity on the situation besides inactive or active. So without saying too much, disciplinary reasons is where obviously most would lean to. And you can see what happens in the future. Obviously, they're not suiting up this week. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. That's all I can really, you know, assess.
The thing with me with Harris, I continue to say it. if this were his first stop and this was happening, I'd be like, okay, maybe both sides are having issues with one another.
Right.
Okay, right. But now you're talking about 2 Power 5 programs having issues, right? Like, you mean to tell me that Brian Kelly does not want Denver Harris out there? Like the potential of Denver Harris.
The potential of Denver Harris is significant. He was a 5-star for a reason. Obviously, some don't translate, some do. But for somebody like Denver Harris, he's on the team because Brian Kelly gave him a second chance at SEC ball. And now it's kind of, is he on a tight leash to where any minor mistake he makes, he's done? Or did he do something bigger than what many want to believe? It's challenging because there's just not as much clarity on the situation.
I don't want to hit the rumor mill, okay? But even if it is as small as, okay, him being late to meetings, I'm not saying I'm confirming that, but I will if I need to. That is a small thing, okay? The problem is that you know that you're on a short leash, and you like, hey, let's be on
continue
time.
To make mistakes,
right? Like, let's be on time, because you know who's being on time? Everybody else.
Yeah.
Right? Like, everybody else is on time. So it sucks, okay, but somebody's going to have to step up here. Let's talk a little bit about Alabama here. What do you think about them? This is a very open-ended question, but what do you think of them as a team? Obviously, we know about them offensively, but just overall as a team, how do you feel about them?
Kind of just starting off defensively, I love what Caleb Downs does. A true freshman killing in the secondary is phenomenal. He's a fantastic player. He leads them in total tackles. He has a couple picks, pass breakups. He does it all. He's been kind of a glue guy for that defense as a youngster, which is extremely impressive to me. Their second level on defense is fantastic. The front is talented. I'm excited to see the battle in the trenches with LSU's offensive line, just because LSU's offensive line is graded out so fantastic this season. That's something that intrigues me a lot. You know, like I said, the battle in the trenches. And then moving to the other side of the ball, look, Jermaine Burton has the chance to eat. Will he? I don't know. But he has the chance to. And I love the weapons that Jalen Milroe has. I know the offense isn't necessarily the best piece of that team, but I love what Burton brings to the table. I love Jace McClellan. I think if you know ball, you know that Jace McClellan's a pretty talented back.
Very
flaws.
Very
flaws. Precisely. He's a physical back. He can put a shoulder down. If he needs to finesse, he can finesse. So I'm excited to see how this interior defensive line goes up against somebody like Jace McClellan. There's a lot that I like about Bama, but there's a lot that I like about LSU as well. It's the number one offense in the country for a reason.
You know, I'm telling people, I know that this is the best offense in the country. I'm not saying that, okay? What I would say is you're not facing a slouch defense. Like, you're not facing just a scrub. Like, you're not, you know, if you get out of there with 38 points, I think you did hella work, okay? Like, they're gonna, LSU more than likely, okay, this happens even the great teams, even the great offenses, ask Burrow, you're gonna have a 3 and out. You're gonna have a drive that stalls. And so, look, I do think that this offensive line, it kind of like what we talked about defense. Hey, man, the best defense you played so far was against Florida State, and people started questioning you, okay, because you got pushed around a little bit. Let's go answer that question against Bama, right? They don't have the dudes in the interior like they used to. Like, go push them around a little bit. Let's get this running game going. Anybody offensively that you think could be the breakout? Nobody talking about Kyron Lacey. Nobody talking about Mason Smith. Nobody really talking about Logan Diggs to some extent. Anybody stand out that you think that we're not mentioning here?
I'd really like to see Mason Taylor get involved early. And I know it's tough to say that because you just said his name, but I'd really like to see somebody like Mason Taylor get involved early in the receiving game. Just a couple, small yardage plays, get involved, get in the receiving game, do what he can, because he's been pretty good from a blocking perspective, allowing Logan Diggs to eat. But I really do think Logan Diggs can also be an X factor in this game. They've been very talented with the inside zone, running it with him through there. So I really think he can become, a big time piece to what this offense does. On the other side of the ball, look, I want to see Andre Sam do something again. I want to see him continue carrying the success from the last couple of weeks and carry the momentum and prove that he can be a consistent piece to the secondary. He has flashes all the time of greatness, but he also has flashes of, some struggles here and there. So I want to see a consistent 4-quarter game from Andre Sam. in a major game in Tuscaloosa. I'd like to see Diggs and then Andre Sam on the other side of the ball.
Last thing for you here, Zach, or really two things, but last football-related question. Greg Clayton's got to catch the football. You can't give up 15, 20 yards of unwarranted field position.
Mm-hmm.
You got to catch that thing, right?
I agree. You need to dominate all three facets of the game, and it's also going to be, key in the punt return game for somebody like Gregory Clayton to handle business, catch the damn football, and let it be. Get the ball back in your offense's hands and ride it out. So, yes, to what you're saying, completely agreed.
Just catch it. I don't need you to do anything after it. Don't need you to do anything special. Just catch the goddamn ball and go home with it. But you mentioned earlier basketball season is underway. LCA is not a good football, or LCA, or not LCA. Louisiana Christian is not a good program. They got,
right.
I want to, for me, I feel like Matt McMahon's team, this is his real true first year. I'm not counting last year against him. I don't know if they've progressed. What have you seen so far out of this basketball team?
I had the chance to sit down one-on-one with McMahon for quite some time, about a month ago.
Okay.
And to me,
where can they find that article?
I wrote about it a while back. It's on LSU Country under the basketball tab. It was a pretty good exclusive on him. And for the most part, man, his entire demeanor's changed, in my opinion. I think he went into year one understanding that it's a work in progress and there weren't going to be results in year one. It's about setting a foundation. And even though year one didn't go as planned, it's about just building traits, which is something that Brian Kelly hints at. Learning how to practice, learning the LSU way. It was a fresh-faced roster. So now you come into year two, and he's kind of set the pillars to success. And he has another fresh-faced roster, but there's a lot of Louisiana talent here. So my major takeaways kind of from the couple practices that we've seen, one game, they're more disciplined. McMahon has a better grasp on the team, and there are a lot more shooters. There's a lot of talent on this team.
Yeah, they can shoot a little bit now.
You got some talented forwards too. Damian Collins, a transfer from Kentucky, was a McDonald's All-American in high school. You add a lot of talent on this, overall roster. I think they have the chance to take the next step. Obviously, there is only up from here. Last year was rock bottom. So you can only take steps up. And I think you're going to see a couple of steps up. It's not going to be this extremely fantastic year for LSU men's hoops, but all you can do is take steps up in the right direction. And I think you'll see that this season.
How good is this women's basketball team?
I almost said something I shouldn't have. It's unfreaking believable.
You have 3 All-Americans on here. I just don't want you to get fired.
No, you got 3 All-Americans. You have the SC Freshman of the Year, the number 1 recruiting class, the number 2 player in America, Michaela Williams. I mean, you have 2 starting lineups. You can go 1 through 10, 1 through 11, and all of them can produce, man. Goddamn, that team's good. That's a scary team, dude.
Yeah, it's a scary team. They unveiled some things today. Good on them for getting some new digs. They're going to be really lethal. So I'm really excited for both of them and both of them to get tipped off. It will be very soon here. Zach, tell everybody where they can catch all your stuff. Tell everybody where you're doing it this week. And thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. LSU Country on Sports Illustrated. You can look it up on Google. You can hit the Twitter. We have an LSU Country Twitter. Go to my Twitter, @ZNagy20. Check it out. Give a follow. Putting out some content pretty routinely, especially on that LSU Country page. So, look, you got it. Recruiting, football, baseball, basketball, men's, women's, whatever you want, you name it.